Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD, Get You Done Venture Studios, premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. And I can see right over to Stanford University from where we are in Palo Alto. Anyhow, I have an incredible guest today. So, Michael Sutcliff is a serial entrepreneur. He's an investor. He is a CEO and co-founder of Mobeus. So, we're going to talk a little bit about today about what it is about creating space for life. And he lives in Inlet Beach in Florida. We're starting to get a lot of more Floridians coming in. A lot of people are relocating from other areas around the country and abroad to Florida, which has been a haven for startups. So, co-founder and CEO of Mobeus, co-founder, executive chairman of HeadVantage, operating partner at Advent, Incora, Collabora. I mean, he's got a lot of experience. So, with that, I'd like to bring him on board to say hello. Hi, Michael. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How about you, Gary? It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. So, tell us a little bit about it. So, when you started your journey, I mean, you've gone all the way from Accenture as a group CEO and what was it like being a group CEO, by the way, of Accenture?
It was fantastic. We were, rapidly building a business that was brand new to Accenture. So Accenture Digital was launched in 2013, and we went from 4.5 billion to 22 billion in revenue in 6 years. So it was a fantastic experience.
And so was it very political when you're in a company like that? If you're a group CEO, did you have to deal with politics all the time?
Well, I wouldn't classify it that way. I helped build Accenture, and I'd done pretty much everything we do in the business, from strategy to consulting to technology and outsourcing work. So I knew everybody. They all knew me. And we worked together really around the agenda of figuring out if we could move the industry forward and serve clients in a new and exciting way. And so I wouldn't say it was politics as much as it was, a fairly active debate at all times on what the best possible use of our resources might be and how we allocated those in different geographies, different industries, different practices around the world. But it was a lot of fun. I actually enjoyed it.
And so when you went down through it, and then you started doing the startup thing, how was the world different from the time you were at Accenture, where you're dealing with a corporation, to the point that you're with Mobeus, which is embedding this technology to be able to create a trusted platform for collaboration, transactions, and communication? What was it like?
Well, the nice thing about being at a company like Accenture is, they recruit about 100,000 of the best and brightest around the world every year to join 700,000 people that are already there doing amazing work. And so just the depth and breadth of the resources, the skills and expertise that's available to you is unmatched. And of course, they serve the majority of the global, 1,000 clients in the world as clients. So when you have an idea that you want to take to an industry and explore, it's very easy to have that conversation. Once you jump over to the startup world, it's exactly the opposite. Right? You've got to find someone to help with everything. You've got to figure out what to insource, what to outsource. And when you've got an idea, you still got to get to a client, get them to talk to you, and then investigate it. And it's a lot harder on the startup side than it is on the corporate side to have those kind of conversations. On the flip side, in the startup environment, there is a massive ecosystem of people that I had not connected to before who've proven to be incredibly helpful. And I've really enjoyed the ability to innovate at pace, right? And to move very quickly and to continue to learn and pivot and learn and pivot and learn and pivot as I've gone. So it's been very different than the Accenture experience, but also a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I see you're still wearing your tie and your white shirt.
I am here at a board meeting today for one of our clients on the private equity side. So yes, I just came out of a board meeting to do this, but I'm usually in Florida in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. Today I'm at a board meeting.
No, that's interesting. So when you've gone down, you've had a wide journey, right? When you've gone down through this journey, if you could say one of the lessons that you've learned, right, that's helped you to be able to move up through the ranks at Accenture and then move over to the startup, but what would you say was the one skill set that's helped you throughout your career to be able to make you better?
Curiosity. I mean, I think at Accenture, I was always the guy doing something Accenture didn't already do. I was building new practices, creating new technologies, moving to new geographies where Accenture didn't have a big footprint. And I was just curious, what would it be like to try and expand the scope of the business? I think the same thing is true in the startup world. There's a lot of, ability to look at different things and see dots differently than other people do and connect them differently than other people do. And I think that just comes from curiosity.
And so curiosity, and you went down through your experience. Did you retire then from did you retire when you went down through, and how was that? I mean, you got the gold watch. Did they really do that, by the way?
They gave me a golf simulator.
Oh, there you
So
go. Well, I guess that's
get
close enough, right?
Yeah, so I was at Accenture for 34 years, and I
Wow.
really felt like as my family, I helped build the company and loved it. I was blessed to do everything I wanted to do in that career, and I decided that I really did want to go out and explore different communities and learn different things. And so I wanted to learn the private equity world, which is why I signed up as an operating partner with Advent. I think they're one of the best in the industry, and I'm learning a ton and would love working with them. And then, that introduced me to board work. It introduced me to a lot of the things that I had wanted to build skills around. But then I also wanted to be able to partner. And so I've got 3 companies that we founded since I left Accenture. All 3, I have, brilliant co-founder working with me. And, it's just one of those things where I decided that, the retirement from Accenture was the right time for me to go think about what the next phase of my life was going to look like. And it's been a blast so far.
No, that's great. So you had your simulation party, you got out, and then that, that's interesting. That's the first time I've ever heard that. I've heard of watches, I've heard of a lot of different things, but that takes
Accenture is a pretty progressive company. So when they asked me, what do you think you're going to spend the next few years on? I said, I'm going to learn to golf, at least get
I should
better
have
at
said,
it.
listen,
So
I'm
they
thinking
thought a
about
golf
I'm
simulator
thinking
might
about
help.
an airplane.
Yeah, I should have told them I
You
wanted
guys
to
want
learn
to
to
chip
fly.
in, it's okay. You know what I mean? Thinking like a Cirrus Vision jet, something like that.
Exactly.
No, that's amazing. So, you've done all these things, and you've led a lot of people. If you could say, what's the key differentiator between successful leaders and people that are coming through the organization and have problems? What would you say, like one key thing that a successful leader has that other people don't?
Probably empathy. The ability to understand that everyone on the team has different capabilities and constraints in terms of what and how they can contribute and what's going on in their lives. I think if leaders start by assuming positive intent, which was one of my underlying philosophies, we assume that the people who are working with us are trying to do a good job. If the job's not getting done, then we as leaders have the responsibility to think about how we've organized the team, how we've described the assignment, whether we've given them the resources they need, and whether we're giving them the coaching that they need to be successful. So I look at leaders as people who view the responsibility for success as theirs. And that, if the team is not giving the result that they're expecting, that's something they have to look in the mirror and ask why they didn't put the team together in a way that would deliver the right result. So I think if you're empathetic and you let others contribute to the extent that they can, and you challenge them to do great things, they usually surprise you with fantastic results, and they grow and learn and enjoy the experience, and so do you.
I had a 4-star admiral on my show, and he was telling me when he was in Desert Storm, he was the number 2 guy in the U.S. military in the White House, in the Joint Chiefs, and he told me that when the planes went out for Desert Storm, he knew that 10% might not come back. And he said, a tear went down my cheek because I'm thinking I'm the one that's going to have to write their, sign the letters that go to their parents and their wives and children and all that. And he said, and I asked him the same question. He said to me, empathy and compassion. He said, because I had to put myself in their shoes of their parents and their loved ones, and how would I feel? And it was interesting because I think that's something we forget about sometimes. If you're not empathetic to people, they don't want to work with you. They don't want to understand.
Well, the one thing about being a leader is you have to have followers, right? So people
Mhm.
are not going to want to follow you if they don't think you're a good leader. And to me, empathy is just kind of the baseline capability to be a good leader. So it's probably where you have to start.
Yeah, it's interesting, but you get like people like Steve Jobs that weren't that empathetic sometimes, and yet they're very successful. It's like
Well,
you
there are
can.
multiple styles of leadership. I mean, that's not one that's ever worked for me, but some people it works.
So if you're going down through your career and you did that, you've had a lot of transitions. How do you go down through when a market's changing? Let's say like in '97, and electronic commerce comes in, and people were kind of resistant to it to begin with.
Mhm.
Amazon's just for books. Amazon's bleeding money. I remember those things. And then you have companies like Broad Vision and Vignette, and these companies come out of the woodwork, and all of a sudden things get fueled for a few years before March of 2020, right? How do you go down through though? And how do you know what to follow? Because you had to do it all the time. You had to figure out who the leaders are going to be and who to follow, right? And now we have it again with generative AI.
Well, one of the things that we did with Accenture Interactive, which was part of Accenture Digital, was we focused on the question of what are the intentions of different audiences? What experiences are they trying to have? And could we look at the world not through the lens of a business model or a product definition or a service definition, but instead look at the world through the lens of how do I create better experiences for whatever audience I'm trying to serve, whether it's a patient trying to receive healthcare or the doctor trying to give the healthcare, or it's a sports fan watching an event, or it's somebody shopping, or it's somebody in business who's trying to develop a more optimized supply chain. All of those opportunities to create better experiences force you to then take a broader view of the business. And they look at, well, first of all, what should be done inside the walls of my business and what should be done by
Mhm.
my ecosystem partners, and how do I organize and orchestrate that experience for that audience in a way that gives them a better result. And if I do that, I'm probably going to win more market share, keep more customers, increase revenue, et cetera. And so I think if you look at the world through that lens, then as you look at each new technology that comes to the into the picture, you don't start with the question of what will it replace or what will it disrupt. Instead, you start with the question of what new experiences could it enable.
Mhm.
And if you look at the world through that lens, then what you see is a world of possibility. And then the question becomes when, right? What are the things that have to be true in the environment for that technology to get some uptake and to then penetrate into an audience and give them a better experience? And so for me, it's not a question of whether each new technology will add value, because they will all add value. The real question is when and where, and then how do we blend that back into the existing operating models and technology platforms that are already existing to serve those audiences. And so it's more of an integration and orchestration question than a disruption question.
How did you go in? Like back in the late '90s, now again we're talking about generative AI. How do you go into these, CEOs that, are in their, late '50s, '60s, they're looking at the end of their career, retiring. How do you talk to them about new technologies? Because they've been on this boat for a long time, and sometimes they don't want to rock it. But then there's these transformative technologies like ChatGPT and Claude and Bard and e-commerce. I mean, we've had it on and on and on, right? But how do you go down through and convince them that this is the right thing to do? What do you do with those folks?
Well, I seldom tried to convince them that any specific technology was the right thing to do. What I tried to talk to them about was the opportunity in their business and how the market was likely to respond, whether they did it or one of their competitors did it. So again, the question is not whether the technology is going to make it to market. The question is who's going to bring it, right? And
Right.
so what I would try to do is say, okay, I met very few CEOs that were retired in place, right? Most of the
Mhm.
CEOs in thriving organizations are, they're playing all the way to the last second.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they always have teams working for them that are also trying to earn that job, right? And so
Yeah.
many times I wouldn't start at the top. I would start with a business unit or somebody that could experiment. And when we're talking about the adoption of a new technology, there are places you don't want to be first, like healthcare. Like I
Mhm.
probably don't want to take people's lives and put them at risk by testing a brand new technology. I'd rather try that in some markets where the failure is not so significant,
Hmm.
So we can test and learn and mature the technology and figure out what the parameters are and where it works and where it doesn't effectively, and then introduce it into an industry that has, a bigger risk reward profile. So
Yeah.
what we would try to do is to help the executives in different industries understand the different rates of adoption and the different learning points about technology. One of the most surprising things, I was in the financial services industry from 2008 to 2014, 13. And in the 2008 period, the world was blowing up and all of these companies were trying to figure out how do they dramatically
Boy,
change.
how was that, Michael? How was that when you heard about the derivatives and all the things happening? What was it like that day?
Well, it was one of those seismic shifts in the industry where the industry understood that whatever they had done for the past 10 years was not going to be what they were going to be doing for the next 10 years, right? There was just that inflection point that said, okay, the game changed and we're going to have to change dramatically in order to play the new game. And they didn't know what the answer was. What was the new game? How long would it take the markets to absorb the loss?
Mhm.
Would there be a massive transition between the big banks and the regional banks, which everybody was predicting at the time? Didn't turn out to happen that way. And so there was a lot of curiosity about what the future looked like, but there was no kind of assumption that the past was going to continue, right? And what
Mhm.
that did was it opened their thinking to what can I try? Where can I experiment? What tools are out there that would allow me to create a brand new operating model that might be a better fit for the future? And so I actually think the work that went on in the financial service industry from 2008 to 2012, which was in the middle of one of the worst times of financial performance, ended up being one of their most innovative times in terms of creating digital products, platforms, services, and operating models that were just different than what we had seen in the past.
No, that's great. So you took the adversity and turned it into opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's always our job to figure out how to take what's going on around us and react to it, right? And what's interesting is I remember we used to have these conversations internally when we talked about practice leaders and people developing the business. And we used to say, gosh, entrepreneurship is about figuring out how to find success given the conditions that you're in, not the conditions you wish you were in,
Hmm.
right?
No, that's
And
true because if you don't, you can't survive and iterate. Somebody said to me, you look at these companies. There's three pillars with a company. If you've access to capital, networking contacts, and operational expertise, you can virtually pivot any company to become a unicorn. People say, well, how can that be? Because it's just the way it is. You have your cheerleaders, you have the capital, and you've got people that are resilient to be able to make that company move it into the point. Not everybody's willing to do that because you have to have a different kind of mindset. You got to be a bit flexible and not afraid.
yeah, and you also have to have earned trust, right? You got to the trust. The market has to give you the permission to pivot
Hmm.
and the permission to serve them in a new and different way, and that comes from the fact that you've earned their trust over some period of time, right?
Yeah,
So
no trust. Trust sometimes takes years to get, or you've had a couple of billion-dollar exits, and all of a sudden, you're Elon Musk. You know, so, hey, what are you doing next? I'm going to drill holes under the ground. Okay, yeah, that sounds great. How can I get some shares? You know what I mean? Like,
it's been pretty phenomenal to watch all the different things that he's taken on over the past decade.
yeah, it's amazing. Actually, I remember when he bought into the Tesla. And I remember going to 101 where we're not too far from where I am right now, actually. And so there's a Tesla dealer. I remember going in there and they had these old Lotuses. I think they were Exesias, and they retrofit them with batteries. I thought, man, these things look like go-karts. And I'm like, I didn't like him as a Lotus. And I'm like, the battery in this thing? It's like, I don't know. But he did it. And the thing is, that's another thing is resilient. You think about what's happening on the planet, right? We know that, we've got 100 million Earth-like planets in the Milky Way, 2.2 billion it's trillion estimated galaxies in the universe, trillion. And then you start looking at what's a possibility of an Earth-like planet being out there, and we got 8.1 billion people on the planet, estimated to be 13 billion by the end of the century. We got to double the food supply by 2050 to feed everybody. Can't increase the number of cattle because 26% of the pollution is methane gas from cows. So what does it mean? Well, we got to have more yield, right? We need more plant-based protein. There's an opportunity for a company. We need to, at some point in time, look at about other places to go in our galaxy and the universe, and how do we get there? That's interesting. So and we've got these climatic shifts like the Atlantic current. that are happening right now, where our average temperatures in the U.S. and Europe could go down 15 degrees Fahrenheit over 10 years, starting in 2025. I mean, this isn't me saying our conspiracy, just the way it is, right? The challenges, and the thing is, we have hope on the planet. We got to figure out how to do things positively to help each other. I spoke at the United Nations twice about technology as a tool for peace. And, I said, these are challenges each one of you have to face in your lifetime. And, we better figure it out, because nothing good's going to happen. Average sea levels could be up 14 feet by the end of the century if the Western Antarctic melts, which could happen, right? And it's estimated 200 years from now, but it could by the end of this century. So let's figure out how to work together to solve these problems instead of continually going after each other and trying to, take somebody else's bread. It's crazy. It's amazing to me. I mean, you've been around a long time too, and I'm sure you see it like I do. It's like, it's insane. When I know growing up as a kid, it seemed like a much different kind of world. Maybe because we didn't have access to information. It was so slow. You didn't know what was happening in another part of the world for weeks, maybe, right? Or days.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in high school, it was in the early 80s. I graduated in 81. And I remember that in 81, we were predicting that we would run out of oil on the planet by, 10 years later. And then we didn't, right? We found solutions and changed the way that we were drilling, and found new ways to extract oil, and found new deposits of oil. And then we had an oversupply of oil, right? And then everyone said, okay, we've got too much. And a couple of years ago, if you were looking at ExxonMobil and, and the conversation they were having with investors, the investors were upset that they owned too many oil reserves, right? And that they needed to get rid of some of that. And now here we are back in the other situation where, we don't have enough again. So it's interesting when you pick anything, climate change.
Well, I mean, the thing is, but Michael, here's the deal, right? I grew up on a farm, so we keep it simple, stupid, from my standpoint. Us farm boys, but there's only so many dead plants and animals that we can extract. You know what I mean? That's basically vegetation and animals. There's only so much. I mean, I would be thinking about what happens next. If you're living in Vermont, right? What are you going to do? If you're living in Florida, you need to have electricity, right? To be able to cool your house. So,
so that's what I was suggesting, is that if we just focus on a solution like oil, then we'll never solve the problem, right? We'll keep thinking we've solved it, we haven't solved it, we've solved it, we haven't solved it. The bigger challenge is, how do we solve energy problems? How do we solve food problems? How do we solve access to water, right? There are lots of significant challenges that we as societies face together. As you pointed out, it's not a country problem or an individual problem. It's a we problem on the planet Earth. And so I've always been a believer that, science matters, not technology, but the underlying science, right? That science.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, we got to spend money on those areas, right?
Exactly.
I've been working in AI for 26 years. I've been working in generative AI since 2016, pre-transformer models. And I'm a clinical psychologist. So my graduate degree is in clinical many years ago. And I remember when I was in my lab, and they said, oh, you're a grad assistant in institutional research. I said, okay. So they put me on the computer, the mainframe. And I remember going in there. I can remember the day I said, imagine when this has a processing power of the human brain. I remember it. And so now look at the challenges and the opportunities we have in front of us, with these multimodal LLMs that can talk to one another and solve problems autonomously. We're doing it now with some of my companies. So this world, I mean, there's so many opportunities out there, and, for us to democratize the opportunity and pass it to everybody so we can all partake. My speech at the UN was, I said, well, why do we have like ISIS and Boko Haram and some of these nefarious groups? I said, a lot of it's because they don't have any food, right? They need to work, they don't have money, so they go to these groups. What if we created job opportunities, real good jobs for people? What happens then? I think it changes. My thing, I'm pretty positive about life, right? But I think it really changes. And so, yeah, it's interesting. And, and you're right about it. The underlying science, I don't know, it seems like we've lost our way a little bit. We used to be real good at it. I remember Real good. And through the semiconductors, having done work with Sun Microsystems and Wang and Digital and the first Apple computers. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff, but we've kind of lost our way, and we got to focus on it. We got to figure out, use these technologies to help us make our lives better, live longer. You're right. It's quality of life and happiness are the most important things, in my opinion. And so getting to that, it's taken a lot of years to get there, to understand that, where you started, it wasn't getting to the place. It's appreciating the journey that you've taken.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's why when I left Accenture, what I wanted to go do next was invent, right? Invent things that don't exist. So I did one in elderly care with Cherish Health, which is focused on how we create better experiences for the elderly people who want to live independently. So not people who want to live in a home or go into a care facility, but want to live in their own home and continue to live independently successfully, and enable them not just with some technology, because most of the technology that was designed for that market wasn't very effective for that market, but also to work on the social aspect of friends, family, and neighbors, in addition to the professional side of the healthcare community. Now, it required some new technology, and we didn't plan to have to build hardware, but we ended up having to do that to solve some of the problems. And then I went from there into sports, because I always wondered why you can't see what an athlete sees while they're playing. So Jay Headley, my co-founder there, as an ex-fighter pilot, happened to be incredibly well-trained in business and in technology, and kind of came up with an idea to create a system that would allow us to know exactly, while the player is on the field playing, what exactly are they looking at right now, right? And so what we came up with was a solution that, again, required some new hardware, but also required orchestration of other information, and then the ability to stream that with less than a half-second delay, to a global audience. And that was an interesting challenge. And then, when we moved on to what we're trying to do with Mobeus, Mobeus was a question of, could we break some of the boundaries that exist today and the constraints that exist, and how we use different digital communication channels. So right now, if I want to communicate with you, I could send you an image, like a Pinterest image. I could send you a document, a Slack message, a text message, a PDF file. I could send you a recorded video. I could come to a video call like this one. I could go into broadcast media, right? There are lots of different ways that I could communicate with you, but each of those channels has its own constraints. And what we wanted to know is, could we break some of those constraints and reinsert a better view of human presence into those different channels? And so that's where we started. As we were doing that, the world kind of shifted.
Better view of human presence into the channels.
Well, so for example, if I wanted to send you a document to explain something to you, let's just say it's a PowerPoint document or a Word document, and I sent that document to you. Well, right now, if I want to put myself into the document to explain it, I could give you my written word. I could put a picture of myself in the document. I could give you my signature. I could even do a short video clip. But if I did anything beyond that, in terms of putting myself into the document, the size of the document would get so big that you couldn't read it. And I couldn't send it to you via email. And so you would have to go to a file share system, and nobody trusts me, and they're not going to do that. So what we wanted to know is, could I send you, for example, a PDF file, a 40-page PDF PowerPoint presentation, where I'm actually in it. I can take you through the document and lead you through it, and you can see my facial animations and my energy, and I can point to things in the document. And the answer is no, you can't do that, right? It's just not possible. But with our technology, it is, and it doesn't change the size of the document. And that human presence, me, could be either recorded, or if I wanted to, when you open the document, I can actually be alive inside the document, and I could be explaining to you what that looks like and taking you through the document and showing you that. And I could actually have co-presenters come into the document and be in the document with me. So maybe there's an author of a section of the document, and I want you to have access to their expertise. I could have that author join me for part of the presentation, come back out, and somebody else come in. So this is not you going to a screen share and have a video call. This is just you sitting on, a desk or a chair somewhere, and you're reviewing a document, and I'm live inside the document. That's an example of breaking a constraint in a digital channel. We're in a digital channel now with a video cast where in a screen share environment, there's no ability for you and I to transact, right? I can't put an affiliated marketing system or an e-payment or e-commerce or any of that, or even a transparent ad into this. I can't do any of that. With our technology, you can do all of that, right? You can, all of the constraints that existed in those digital channels are what we're trying to break, because what it allows us to do is then start to create different experiences, right? And if I can create new experiences, then I can be more effective in how I communicate. Now, when we were doing this, the world moved from 2D to 3D. So it presented a question for us. Do we just keep, doing our work in the 2D world, or do we start to investigate something that might be game-changing in the 3D world? And we decided what might be game-changing in the 3D world in terms of communication and interaction is, what if I could actually take 3D content, like a space, a digital twin of a space. I happen to be in a hotel room, so it could be a digital twin of this hotel room, and a digital twin of an object. Could be an object like, my phone or a product I want to sell you, and my presence. And I want to be able to mix and match 2D and 3D spaces, objects, and presence. Well, right now you can do it, but you would need to wear goggles or glasses to be able to see into the 3D. And then you'd have to wear you have to use a gaming controller or wear a wearable glove in order to reach in and grab something in that 3D environment. And what we wanted to be able to do is to say, well, actually, you should be able to do that with the hardware you've already got, right?
Mhm.
On your existing laptop or desktop that we're using for this kind of a screen share. You should be able to see into and get depth perception into a 3D world. And then you should be able to say, okay, now I want to reach into that 3D world and manipulate something in there and play with it. And so that's another set of technology that we invented. And so our team has been very busy trying to invent those kind of technologies. And that's really what we're working on.
No, that sounds great. Well, listen, we're coming up to the top of the show. We'll have to get you on again, and it's great having you here today. Sorry
Well,
about
thank you.
technical challenges. It's kind of funny. I'm in Silicon Valley when I'm here. The bandwidth is slow, the technology updates, but hey, that's life.
Well,
Anyhow,
it's been my pleasure. Very much appreciated.
yeah, no, it's been my pleasure too. I really appreciate you taking your time, Michael, out of your busy schedule. So wrapping it up, we have a lot of investors from around the world. We have had, I just checked, we have almost 180,000 views, and several thousand subscribers. What would you say to them? The words of wisdom, as you've gone down through and you've had an incredible career, what advice would you give to those entrepreneurs that are out there and that are out there doing a startup and trying to figure out what's the right thing to do? What advice would you give them?
Solve real problems and build tools, not toys.
Solve real problems, tools, not toys. That's fantastic. All right. Thank you for taking your time. It's been great. And thanks to all of you out there for joining one more time. GSD presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again on Thursday for another exciting edition. Take care, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show. Take care, Michael. It's appreciated.
Bye-bye.